Hello, and welcome to the Bamboo Lab podcast with your host, Peak Performance Coach Brian Bosley. Are you stuck on the hamster wheel of life, spinning and spinning, but not really moving forward? Are you ready to jump off and soar? Are you finally ready to sculpt your life? If so, you've landed in the right place. This podcast is created and broadcast just for you. All of you strivers, thrivers, and survivors out there. If you'd like to learn more about Brian and the Bamboo Lab, feel free to reach out to explore your true peak level at www.bamboolab3.com.
Welcome, everyone, to this week's episode of the Bamboo Lab podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Bosley. And today we have a guest on that I've been very excited to introduce. In fact, I just texted my son, Dawson, which most of you know who have been subscribed for several months now, that Dawson likes to call or text right in the middle of a lot of podcasts. So I always have to text him and say, hey, son, I'll be at a podcast for the next hour. And he said, all right, Dad, have fun. I said, Dawson, I've been so excited to interview this guy for so long and talk with him, and he knows that. So, but before I introduce our guest, I want to just share with you some of the latest analytics. Today, the recording of this podcast is February 8th, 2023. And as of this morning, we are now being subscribed to still on 6 continents, 44 countries, all 50 states. And right now we are in 1,207 cities across the globe. So, and I just want to take the time to thank all of you Bamboo Pack members and listeners for listening to us, for subscribing, for rating and reviewing us, and most importantly, for sharing us with 3 loved ones. That's such an important thing. When we have such amazing guests like we do today, this message needs to go to the people you care about. And you're doing that, and it's showing so much. And I can't thank you enough. Today, I just want to read a heart letter that we received from, actually, I'm going to read this. This one came in through the public, so I can share who this came from. This is from best-selling author Sue Harrison, who was one of my favorite authors of all time in her trilogies that she's written. And my favorite novel of all time, and top 3, I should say, is Mother Earth, Father Sky, which was her first one that really took big. She sent me a Facebook post that said, Brian, I just listened to Dawson's podcast interview. So for those who don't know, I interviewed my son Dawson a couple of months ago, my 20-year-old Northern Michigan University sophomore son. She said, you have one very wise, very amazing kid there. I suppose I shouldn't call him a kid. He's far beyond that in his ability to reason and plan out his life. Thank you for sharing him with all of us who are your listeners. Love what you have. I love that you have strive, love, and live. I'm still learning in my old age. So you are far from old, man. You are young at heart, and you continue to light the world up with your new book that just came out, I believe, this week. And I wish you the best of luck with it. All right. I just want to take the moment today to dedicate this episode to a family in East Jordan, Michigan, who lost their mother and grandmother over the past few days. Janet McKinnon passed away on February 4th, 2023. I never had the chance or the pleasure of meeting Janet, but I have heard so many amazing things about her, and there will be a big gap left in this world as she passes on to her next journey in this existence. So for Susan, Angela, and David, and all 6 grandchildren, this one's for you. All right. Okay, so today, before I really introduce him officially, I want to read the bio of this amazing man we have on today, Art DeLorenzo. And his bio is so extensive, I have to go through it and fine-tune it. I'm sure I'm going to miss some high points, but I'm going to do my best. But we've got Art DeLorenzo on today. He has more alphabets and letters after his name than most people. And if you met him, he would never tell you that. But I'm going to tell you that. He's a CLU, ChFC, CFP, MSFS, and MSEd. And those are all designations somewhere between the financial and educational world. He has been involved in the financial services industry since 1968. He began his career following his graduate degree in education from Ithaca College and his undergraduate degree in education from Castleton University in Vermont. He started off in his career as a financial advisor, but soon went into management, and you'll know why soon. District sales manager, division manager, field vice president, and group vice president of the Upstate New York, Vermont market group with Ameriprise Financial. And back then, for those who don't know, the company that I formerly worked in as well, it was IDS Financial Services, which was a branch of American Express. Then in right around 94, 95, somewhere in there, we became American Express Financial Advisors. Now its name is Ameriprise Financial, which a lot of you recognize. Art spent a great deal of time there as an incredibly effective, very high-profile leader, and he retired from the position of group vice president in 2005. And the time he was at the leadership of that market group, it grew in productivity and sales immensely. He holds the distinction of being the only field leader in the Ameriprise Hall of Fame. That's pretty cool. Now he is a founding partner in the MYT group, and that stands for Maximize Your Talent. Which what they do is they really are specialists. And when I've talked to Art over the years, in understanding the impact that emotional competency has on individuals, on their stress, on their happiness, on their productivity, their success in life. And they work with individuals and teams and really help them to really two things, which are really important things: lower stress, increase productivity. A phenomenal team of people in this company. Also, what's most important about Art is that he's incredibly proud of his family. He and his wife, Deborah, have been married for 42 years. They have 4 children, 7 grandsons, and 2 granddaughters. And that might even be updated. There might be bigger numbers now. I'm not sure yet. But he considers himself an accomplished, mediocre golfer. And also, what's cool about Art is he is a retired mountain climber. He has climbed some of the greatest peaks and mountains in the United States of America and the Himalayas. He also was inducted, I believe, in 2010 to the Castleton University Athletic Hall of Fame. He also was inducted into the Hall of Fame for the Fortune 500 company where he has spent his entire career. Now, he and his wife, Deborah, and Art is still working. But they spend a lot of time going back and forth from their home in New York City and Martha's Vineyard. And the reason this is such an honor for me today is because I've known a lot of my guests over the years, or over the last several episodes in the last year, 12, 13 months we've been doing this, 70 episodes or so. But Art and I've been able to really talk with Art many, many times over the past several years. It's been a little sporadic over the past 3 years or so, but I know I can text him, email him, or call him at any time. He has been an integral part of my growth and development. You won't find a more generous, kind, wise, experienced man on this planet. So with that introduction, Art DeLorenzo, welcome to the Bamboo Lab podcast, my friend.
Well, thank you, Brian. And if you saw my face now, the cheeks are really red. So I thank you for those kind words. Very thoughtful of you.
Well, you are, Art. You deserve that and much, much more. Art, I know quite a bit about you, and I've gotten to know you over the years. And I know when I left American Express in 1996, you were already a well-known name in the company. But then I reached out to you several years later, and you were so gracious with your time and energy and your focus that we've been able to spend quite a few hours on the phone over the years. So I've gotten to know you, but can you please share with with me even some more, as well as the Bamboo Pack and the listeners, a little bit about who you are, where you came from, your childhood, whatever you want to share, Art.
Okay, thank you. Well, you hit a very tender nerve for me. One of those of you who know Doug Lennox, you know that he's a good champion of us understanding what our values are and then living our lives in alignment with those values. And my number one value is heritage. It's not as grandiose as some kind of encyclopedia definition, but for me, it's just I want to be grateful for the heritage that I've had from my family, but also the heritage that I've had from experiences like working with you, Brian, and Doug, and others. So there's 2 pieces to this heritage picture that I have in my mind, and to kind of add some evidence to that, I did a lot of family tree work, and starting with my own grandparents, who were immigrants from Italy in the early 1900s. Actually, it's over 125 years ago. And of course, I grew up with my parents, who were, first generation Americans, Italian Americans, and I wanted to know. I always had this curiosity about, well, where did all of this come from? And so I started doing some research, and I was offered an opportunity to spend 4 or 5 months in Italy on a project for American Express when I was with American Express in the late 70s. And so I started finding cousins and finishing this family tree. And so then I asked my cousin to draw me a map. I wanted to go up to the village where my great grandfather built this home that started this whole plan. And so he drew me a map, and I took the train up to Venice, and then got a bus that took me up to Nebu, which is the name of the village. And then I walked from where the bus left me off to the house. And but when I got there and I looked at the map that my cousin drew, I could not for the life of me figure out which house it was. And so I walked down this little road, and it was grass and with the indentations where carts would go up and down it. And I could not figure it out. And so I sat down on a wall. And when I sat down on a wall, the hair on the back of my neck started going up. And I was hyperventilating. And my grandfather on my mother's side died when he was, I think, 32, 33. I was about that same age at that point. And the only thing I could think of was, my gosh, I must be having a heart attack. And so I stood up and I started to pace back and forth, trying to get my rhythm back, my breathing back. And then there was a lady down at the corner. She had a little shop, and she was just opening up, because after the siesta, then that's when the shops open again. So I went down and I asked her, and luckily I could speak some Italian, and I said, I'm trying to find my great grandfather's house. And she looked at me and she said, you were sitting on his wall. So that was a striking life experience, and it was almost like, a message that says, you're here. I'm glad you're here. And that started a whole bunch of trips to Italy that we've gotten to know all of our cousins, their kids, and their children. And in fact, this last summer we took all 4 of our kids. We didn't take them; they took themselves. We went along, and we went up and saw the house, and all 4 grandchildren, and now all 10 grandchildren were there. One of them was in uterus at the time, but we still counted her as being there.
Of course.
So that's my background. A little bit about Castleton University. What's not there is that when I was a senior, we won a national championship for soccer, and I'm in the Hall of Fame there. You mentioned that. I'm also in the Hall of Fame, at the Soccer Hall of Fame, and so that's a little bit about my background. Grew up in the Bronx when my grandfather died, which was only a few months after I was born. And when my father and his brothers settled their estate, they bought a luncheonette in the Bronx, and that's where I went to elementary school. And they sold it and bought another one in Ridgewood, New Jersey, and they sold that in 1958, and that's when I went to Castleton. So that's a little background.
Wow. I just learned some things I did not. I've never heard the wall story before.
I don't tell it very often.
Oh, I'm really glad you told it because I had goosebumps. Because when you said I sat down and I started the hair on my neck stood up and I was hyperventilating, I thought, okay, there's a connection to that wall. There's got to be some connection to that wall. That is so amazing. That's a very, very cool. You know, what's so cool, Art, is I've heard a lot of stories. I shouldn't say a lot. I've heard several on the podcast of people having these kind of experiences that are, I wouldn't call it paranormal, other than paranormal means anything outside of anything normal. So I guess we could call it paranormal, some connection to us, to our spiritual selves or something beyond what we really could consciously or rationally could fathom. And that's just another one that kind of gives me the feeling that there's something there that connects us to our past and to our future and to, I don't know, to the what we can't see, touch, hear, feel, and taste. So I think that's amazing. Well, so knowing the man you are today, and the Bamboo Pack will soon know more about you. I've known about you. You don't realize when we first started talking, Art, several years ago, I was a single parent raising a young boy on my own, struggling at times, not just emotionally, but, financially. And I'd be talking to you on the phone and you'd be saying, yeah, you got to see this view. We just got to Martha's Vineyard for the weekend and you got to see this view. And I always use that as inspiration to say, okay, not just the professional and financial success you've achieved, but a lot of just who you are, your emotional competency and intelligence is something I've always strove for. So I want to know who or what inspired you growing up to become the man you are today.
Well, I think a couple of 3 or 4 things, and then I'll tell you a story to evidence.
I love your stories, by the way.
Thank you. So when I was at Castleton, and we won that national championship, it was a challenging time in my life, and I was angry, and I was angry all the time, and it wasn't pleasant for my colleagues, and until I got to my senior year, and that's when a professor that I took a history course with required, so I just showed up, because I had to, and for some reason he took an interest, in me, and I happen to like history, so it was a nice combination. And then he was a big soccer fan, so he would come to our games, and I know that the coach, Dick Terry is his name, and Bob Patterson was the professor, and so they kind of took me under their wings because being angry. The reason I was angry is I had no money, and my brother was very fortunate to get a nice scholarship to go play football, but I didn't have those athletic talents, and they didn't have the finances to help me a lot. They helped me a little. And so every day I was trying to figure out how was I going to eat, and every part-time job I could get, I took, and that discipline taught me a lot about how to get along in life. And I'll tell you the story in a minute, but those two people were the people that took me, and this angry kid that got thrown out of basketball games, for throwing the ball in the stands because he didn't like the referee's call, and they literally transitioned that young man into a good man, and it helped that I had that, because I had no other reason to learn how to be calm, and they taught me how to be calm, and so. My early idea story is that we used to have leads, and we would follow up on leads. And on one of the leads, the person wrote on it, "Send no salesman." And so every time I got to that lead, I would always put it at the back of the pack. until one day when I had no more leads, and that was the only lead I had left. I went and knocked on the guy's door because I didn't have a phone number. And the guy answers the door, and I says, my name is Art DeLorenzo. I'm with IDS. You had asked about some information on mutual funds. And he says, didn't I write on that to send no salesman? And I looked at him, and I said, according to my divisional manager, I'm the closest thing to no salesman that we have. So he invites me in, and smiling. And he says, I have no money. and I says, I've been there. And he says, but I'm curious about what mutual funds are. So I sat down with him and spent an hour, taught him about mutual funds, and shook his hand and went off. About 5-6 years later, my daughter Allison is dragging the soccer balls off the field because we had soccer practice for the kids. And this guy walks up to me and he says, you don't know who I am? I said, I don't. Are you so-and-so's father? And he said, yeah, I'm so-and-so's father, but I'm also don't send any salesmen. So he had a good laugh. He became a client, and it just helps you to stay focused on good guiding principles, and that's my kind of inspiration piece answer.
Send no salesman. How about the closest thing to no salesman that you can find? Was that your first year?
Yeah, that was, I think, the first year I was in the field. Yeah, I was an advisor.
Yeah, I was too, Art. And I've shared this story many times. I think there were 28 or 29 advisors in the Okemos, Michigan office when I joined out of college, and at 90, 91, somewhere in there. And I was number 29 after 5 or 6 months. and it was a matter of I had to either leave the company or I had to stay and grit it out. And I remember one day, and I was shaving. I remember this. And I didn't like that the management was all over me. They were sitting in my appointments. They were watching me make phone calls. They were micromanaging me. And I'm a lone wolf guy. I'm not a big, it's just not who I am. I don't like people hovering over me. And so I remembered a quote in my head, and it just said, it's never crowded along the extra mile. And I read it in a Wayne Dyer novel or book, but I don't know who the original quote came from. And it stuck with me. If I want to be, I don't want it to be people to be around me all the time and smothering me and micromanaging me. I better go to number one. And that's when I started my journey up the ladder. It was at that moment shaving in my little apartment in, I think it was in Hazlitt, Michigan at the time, or Bath, Michigan, I think it was. Yeah. So that's amazing. I love that. Send no salesman. That took a lot of gumption for a young man to go knocking on a door when the note said, were they called R&Ls back then, or was that before R&Ls?
Yeah, that's R&L.
Yeah, I got the old R&Ls as well. For those who don't know, R&Ls was, I don't even know what they were leads that we called our leads. It was an abbreviation for something, but. Well, so,
I don't remember myself. Thank you.
It was something lead. I remember that. And I remember getting our stack of R&Ls. We'd be so excited to start calling those. We haven't had as much contact since the COVID and the pandemic and the quarantines and such. But what would you say from that time on, not even because of the COVID, but just over the past 2 years or so, what would you say has been your greatest learning?
Good question. I think number one was the reality that daily work travel was a give back to families. And I don't know how many people, clients, shared with us that the fact that they got an hour and a half or 2 hours in some cases twice a day back into their lives with their families was a blessing, and it taught them, the meaningfulness of having that time with their children. People were going to concerts with kids that they could never make because they couldn't get home in time for, or sporting events, orchestra events, so I think from that perspective, it was a blessing, and I hope as best as can be that some of that is preserved as the pandemic slides into history.
Mm-hmm.
Number two was it taught us, because you know about MIT, so we started this company, this emotional intelligence training company, on a hypothesis in 2001, and we ended it in 2009. So we started as a company in 2010. So now we're further down the road, and here's this pandemic thing showing up, and it's disconcerting. How are we going to do this work? And we went to Zoom like so many people did. But what it taught us was that emotional intelligence skills are drastically needed to quiet people's bias. What's happening in our country, the absence of civility, and when people have challenges about how one person thinks, and I think that's a learning, but it's a sad learning.
Mm-hmm.
And we've done some work with a lady by the name of Danielle Allen up at Harvard. And you can Google her stuff, Our Common Purpose. She's been working with opposing politicians to get them to find ways to address the needs of the taxpayers and our citizens without throwing hand grenades at each other. And I encourage your audience to look her up and read about it. But that's what's startled me over the last 3+ years is those 2 points.
I love that. I do. It is a learning, and it was, like you said, it's kind of a sad learning, but it was a necessary learning for. I have seen so many people, Art, and I've shared this on the podcast. People I know and love dearly. There were really, over the past 3 or 4 years, either you came out of that situation, those challenges, a much better human being, or you came out a much weaker human being. And I don't like to use that word weaker, but you came out with a lot more emotional challenges than you ever did, dependent upon how you handled yourself and how you handled your emotional competency during that time frame. And I think that's right on. So what I'm going to include, everyone listening, I will include obviously a direct link to the MIT website. I'd love you to get on there and check it out. I think they'd be great for you to reach out to someone from the team and see how they can help you, your team, your company, because they do such amazing work. And I'll have all that information, but I also will include a link to Danielle Allen and her work, so you can just click on that to go right to the research and the work she's been doing with the politicians. I think that'd be fantastic. I know I'll be clicking on it tonight. Those are great learning. So I just want to stop for a moment and address the Bamboo Pack listeners out there. Many of you are driving, you're on your treadmill, you're hiking, you're walking. You might be walking around your house, listening, cleaning while you're listening to this podcast. So here are some learnings that I just really loved so far. I loved when we talked about Art's childhood, and he said, my number one value, and I know he referenced Doug Linnick, who, as many of you remember, was on a podcast this past summer of 2021, an amazing episode with an amazing man. And they talk a lot about values and just defining your top values. And right away, Art said, mine is heritage. That's a really interesting value. I don't know I've ever talked with anybody who said that as their number one. And when I think about it as he was talking, I thought, really, what else is there? Because we all come from somewhere, our heritage, and we're all starting another heritage. And everything we do, everything we think, feel, our behavior, our habits, our actions, all start determining how we handle and process the heritage where we've come from, and now set the stage and the path for the heritage we are now creating for the future generations. I mean, that's a foundational bedrock value right there. I really, really love the fact that he had a professor and a coach, a soccer coach, who took this angry young man and turned him into a person who he said they transitioned this young man and taught him how to be calm. And as you can tell, Art is one of the calmest men you'll ever meet. There's this, when you think of Art, when I think of him, I think of that saying, I'd rather be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. Art is a warrior in a garden. And he can do the battle, but he's a strong, calming presence. Whenever I've spoken with him, I've always walked away with my blood pressure lower, just to where it should be. But what I really like too is, for me, is that story of a young man, not financially successful yet, not professionally successful, still working on his emotional competency, probably at the birthing stages of that, gets a lead that says, send no salesman. And after going through his leads, he decides, I'm knocking on this door. And taking that courage and that wit he used to overcome this person. And then eventually, over the course of years, the gentleman became a client. Think about right now what you're dealing with in your life and symbolize it. Use art symbol of something that you're afraid to do, maybe something somebody told you shouldn't do, but you just know instinctively it's the right thing. Maybe something you've been holding back on, sharing your love with someone, asking someone out on a date, starting that job, starting that side hustle, starting your company, starting a new fitness health program, whatever it might be. Think of that lead that Art held in his hand that said, send no salesman. Because a lot of things in life say that to us. Send no salesman. They're telling us not to do something. Don't stretch your comfort zone. Stay where you are. Stay comfortable. Stay that hamster on the wheel. Be like Art. Get off the hamster wheel. Step out of your comfort zone and send the salesman. So I love that. And so we're gonna go back to you now. I'm gonna ask the question that I've always prefaced this with every guest, saying you don't have to answer it, but if you do, I'm gonna ask it now. What is the most difficult thing you've ever gone through in your life, or one of them? And how did you scale that brick wall? How did you overcome it?
Interesting question. I think it was the challenge of going from anger to calm. I think when I think back in life and think about the ridicule that I caused for myself by being so angry and not caring what other people think or say, and just throwing fits whenever I wanted to. I hated that person. Mm-hmm. And I think with their tutelage, I think and with by absolute destiny, learning about emotional intelligence and reading all those books and working with PhDs to build a curriculum that people could walk away from. People like me that I didn't have that when that experience. I was lucky. I had two people that took an interest in me, but I had nothing else after that. Well, what if you don't have those two people? It's a challenge to change ourselves, change our behaviors. If God wanted us to have, one brain that knew what to do when we were angry, and another brain to know what to do when we were calm, He would have given us two heads, but we only have one. And so we have to learn how to navigate when those challenging things come to us. We have to learn to navigate to stop the anger as fast as we can and move to calm, so we can think about how to solve problems. Because the brain will not think if it's angry. It won't. It can't. It throws basketballs up into the stands, gets thrown out of basketball games. That's what that looks like. And so expecting somebody that's angry to be complicit with your thoughts or your feelings is not going to happen. But you can do it for yourself. And it's one of the things that I've worked really hard at. One of the key principles is when I have I think you used the word raw was one of your questions. And what I've learned to do is anticipate what I want the person that I'm finished speaking with. I want to try as best as I can to know what they're going to be thinking when they're walking away. And then I want to match my behavior and my language with them, so that I'm targeting them walking down the hall saying, that was a good opportunity. I didn't like the news, but I have somebody that's interested in me and wants to help me grow, and I'm going to find a way to solve the problem.
Okay, I'm just writing this down. So what I want to share, a couple things I want to share with you, Art. You had mentioned, I think there's always been a kinship between us as we've talked. And one of them, I think, when I look back at my college experience, you played soccer, I played rugby. I was Art DeLorenzo just a few years after. I was a very angry, I would call myself violent. I was very violent on the rugby pitch. I was in street fights and bar fights on a consistent basis. My friends were always rolling their eyes. And now they look at me as we talk. In fact, I'm spending this weekend with one of my former teammates and his family in Traverse City, Michigan. And in 2 months, another two of my former captains that we were captains together, the three of us are going on a 60-mile hike together. And when we all get together, they kind of laugh and say, this isn't the Brian we knew. This isn't the Brian we knew 30 years ago, because I don't know how I transitioned from anger to calm, and but obviously I've read a lot on emotional competency. I'm nowhere near the level that the MIT group is, and you are. But I think that you are exactly right. I love what you said. We have to navigate from anger to calmness. And when I was going to ask you, how do you do that? I love the example you gave. And I think we can all use this when we're communicating, which our lives, whether we're parents or leaders or salespeople or washing dishes or whatever we are, cab drivers, we are always in contact and communication with other people. And when you communicate with people, I always tell my clients that I always share that all we are doing is exchanging energy. And energy is either positive or negative. And we really have to focus on being positive with our energy or in our communication, or it's probably going to come off negative. And I love what you said, because I've never heard it put that way, is imagine the person when they're walking away. What do you want them thinking and feeling? And then target your words and your behavior when you're speaking and communicating with them to match that. That's very simple, especially for all the parents out there who might have young kids or grandchildren or teenagers in their lives. Just what do you want them thinking and feeling when they walk away? Match your behavior and words to that. It's that simple. May not be that easy, but it's very simple. Very good technique. Do you put any stock or much stock into the form of meditation in order to get your mind and body to calm?
Sure. Yeah, I have a little checklist that I use. It's I'm going to have to retype it pretty soon. I've worn it down pretty badly, but the steps are I need to prepare ahead of time. When I'm going to have a challenging situation, for me, some people can do it spontaneously. I cannot. And so I deliberately take time and I prep myself using principles and applications. And I try to, use them in the wording that I'm going to be using. I also then meditate beforehand. And usually a good 8 to 10 minutes of meditation gets me into a really nice, calm place. Then there are some things I do in the meeting. For the one thing I do is I ask permission for me to take a break if I feel the need to take a break. And I do that up front. And so if I get to a situation where I'm starting to feel my own SUDS level starting to go up because of being accused of something, I will say, I'd like to take 2 minutes, and we can sit right here. All I would ask you to do is just let me close my eyes and think for myself just for 2 minutes. I have never, ever, ever had anybody say no. So what do? I sit there and I think, and I say to myself, what do I want this person to be thinking when they walk down the hall? I want to make sure I contain my voice. I don't raise my voice at any time. I want to refresh my memory how important that is, and then I'm back in. And if we have time, I'll tell you a story about Phoenix, because I was speaking there. Here's another resource for you, Dr. Fred Luskin at Stanford. He runs the forgiveness program there. Started it. He's been a close friend of mine for 30 years. And so I'm there talking about forgiveness and the importance of it and why it's healthy to not carry angst around with you, because it's not healthy for us. And and that forgiveness is not for the other person. Forgiveness is for you, so that you can let go of that, whatever experience you've had. A big guy, about, I don't know, I'll make this up. I don't know how tall he was, but let's say he was about 6'10", must have been 300 pounds. I'm sure he was a body wrestler or something. I don't know, but a big man. He stands up, and when you're speaking, as you know, Brian, it's rare that an audience member would stand up and attempt to talk, to the presenter, without being invited to do so.
Right.
So he stands up and he says, that's all well and good. He says, well, what would you do if someone killed your son? And I said to him, I'd like to think just for 2 minutes. I'm going to step away from the podium, and then I'd like to just think for 2 minutes, and then I'm going to come back and answer your question. I promise I will. I stepped back from the podium. I thought for 2 minutes. I went back to the podium, and I said, I would forgive that experience, that person that did that to my son. And the reason I would is because I'd still have 3 daughters, and I'd have a whole bunch of grandchildren, and I have, the love of my life, my wife, 40, almost 48 years now. 40. And I would be punishing all of them because I'd be furious all the time. And so he sat down, I finished my talk, and went on my way. I said hello to people, came up, shook hands, all that stuff, Brian, what happened. Right. And a guy comes up to me. That's not the guy that asked me the question. And he says, he wasn't asking you that question for you. He was asking that question for himself because his son was killed. Mm. So when you're dealing with tense situations, it is emotional intelligence that gets you out of them all the time. But it's hard work. You said it before. It's so hard to discipline the brain to do the things you want it to do that that are in the best interest of the body that brain is in. And so, sorry, just
no, that's
fine. Still, as you can tell, it's still a lingering experience for me.
You take your time, my friend.
Yep, I'm good now.
Well, interesting, Art, as you were talking, my mind wandered off the window as you were talking about forgiveness, and especially when you said, I would forgive for myself. I would be grateful that I still have my daughters and my grandchildren, my lovely wife of almost 48 years, because otherwise I would be transferring a lot of that pain and anger and hatred sometimes that we have for people onto them. And it makes me really reflect on some family situations we've had recently in the last couple of years in our family that with siblings of mine. And I've held a lot of anger towards some things they've done, and I realize that without that forgiveness, that it's not for them; it's for my family, my children, my mother, my grandson, and for myself, so that I can let go of that and be the best possible dad, son, and grandfather to them. So I really appreciate that one. That one hit me dead smack in the heart.
Well, good for you, Brian, because it's. We only have one heart, and of all the muscles that we have, we need to cherish every exchange between our brain and our heart that we can possibly deliver to it, because it wants the calm. It does not want anger. When it has to deal with anger, it goes into convulsions. It hates it, and if it could maybe have this little fun game of conversation between the heart and the brain, and the heart would be saying to the brain, "Can you stop dumping all of that garbage down on me?" It's called cortisol, and when the brain does finally stop and give nice and calm the heart yells back up, "Hey, thanks for the call. I appreciate it. Now I can have a little better day today."
And that is very true. And I'm going to very much make a focus of that, of mine. I've had it in the back of my mind over just the past 10 or 12 days of the idea of how do I dissipate this anger that I have. And it really comes down to one simple word: forgiveness. So for all the Bamboo Pack listeners out there, I will include a link also to Dr. Fred Luskin, friend of Mr. DeLorenzo. And so you can read more on forgiveness, because so many of us have somebody we despise, we don't like, we're holding anger onto. And really, that's really just destroying us slowly. Our minds, our souls, our hearts, and our bodies can deteriorate from such anger. So I'll include some of his works in here as well. So please look at the links below. So, Art, as you have now started as a financial advisor in 1968, went up the ranks in a Fortune 100 company, became a group vice president, which I know when I was there, group vice presidents, and they walked in the halls, man, it was like, there was a deity or a king in the hallways. I remember those days. And then being inducted into the Hall of Fame, several Hall of Fames, and now being a founding partner of MYT. All this, you and Deborah have been married for almost 48 years. I misspoke at the beginning saying 42. 48 years almost. You've got these children and grandchildren. Now at this point in your journey, what is a win for you? What do you consider a victory to be?
Well, I think the wins come in two piles, family and work. It's easy on the work side because, we're a new company, only 10, 12 years old, and we don't get a lot of unsolicited, clients at this point, or unsolicited referrals. And so that would be nice, but it's not important, but it'd be nice. On the family side, I am executing on my succession plan, and hopefully within the next year or two at the most, we're going to convert MYT into an ESOP, which from your training and financial planning training experience. And I just want to spend more time I want to go back to Italy a number of times. I want to live there for a while, and as I did once before, and I want to watch my kids play sports and go to concerts, and but I want to see MYT group in a really solid position, which is what they're doing now. So,
I love that. So I'm going to ask you another question, Art. And if you and I were to jump today, I'm going to fly out. Are you in New York City? Or are you at Martha's Vineyard?
Right now we're in New York City, Manhattan.
You're in Manhattan, okay. If I got to Manhattan today and you and I were to jump in a time machine and we're going to go back to that senior at Castleton, and you're going to sit down and talk to that young man, and I'm going to sit back and observe and take notes. What advice would you give to your younger self at that stage? What words of wisdom, what recipes for life, success, whatever they might be?
That's a good question. That's a really good question. I think the advice I would offer is find somebody that will take a personal interest in you and ask them to be a mentor to you. I backed into it. I didn't know to do it on my own. So that's what I would say to that person. I would say, find a mentor, somebody older, a little more life experience, preferably not maybe a family member, not an immediate family member. I think a good mentoring experience is it's not dissimilar to financial planning in many ways, because when you're starting out and you build a plan for people and they execute on that plan, and you watch them educate their kids and go to college and meet their, buy the camp on the lake and fill their retirement bucket, so that it has enough money in it that can satisfy them for the rest of their lives. I think, that in that way, a financial advisor is a mentor. So I would just translate that and say, okay, I'm a senior in college. Look around you. Go to a professor. Go to your guidance counselor. And if you can't get any satisfaction here, start asking others, and see if you can find somebody that would lend you that soft voice of calm.
I think that's so powerful. I think that could apply. Well, it does apply to anyone in life. So anyone out there in the Bamboo Pack right now, that's something we really haven't touched upon in many of our episodes of the podcast. Is if you feel like you're the hamster on the wheel, or you feel like you're successful, you want to go to the next level, or you are highly successful and you want to make sure you stay there and continue to grow, look for someone. Go out and seek a mentor. Ask someone who can take a personal interest in you, probably somebody a little more further down the trail, and probably best case scenario, not an immediate family member, because that can get a little convoluted and there could be some biases in there and things of that nature. But seek someone out who can help guide you along, somebody you can look to a little bit for guidance. Last Friday, or last Thursday, I'm sorry, I think it was, or Wednesday, I'm not sure, a week ago, last week anyway, I had a Bamboo Pack listener reach out to me via Facebook Messenger and asked some questions about how he can increase his confidence level and self-esteem. And he's a high school and now a college athletic coach. And I said, well, why don't you just call me? Well, let's set up a time. We'll talk. It's too hard for me to type this. And so we had a meeting last week anyway. I think it was Wednesday or Thursday. And at the end, he said, I woke up this morning and I knew I was going to be talking to you. And it was like I heard a voice, whether it was from God, I believe it was from God, he said, who said, ask Brian to mentor you. And it was like, so I know that you out there the listener, the one who asked me this, I know you're listening. I do want you to know it was an incredible honor. I did tell him I would get back with him on, let me define what mentoring means. I'd like to find out. I did tell him that I would be glad to now. We're going to have to find some odd times because our schedules don't match up. So we might be doing 5 a.m. mentoring sessions and talking, but I'm going to do it. It was such an honor for him to ask me that. It really was. So I got to give him kudos and credit for, having the courage to do so. So anybody else out there, please don't just call me your Art, but find somebody in your life who you feel just, hey, it's a sounding board. It's a person who can be unbiased, unprejudiced, who can give you objective guidance and feedback. What I think a good mentor is, the way I subscribe it, is someone who can celebrate with you, someone who can help support yourself, help support you when you're down, and somebody who will challenge you to grow, to be the best version of yourself. So, Art, the next question normally is, what's next for you? But I think I got that. You're turning MYT into an ESOP. You and Deborah are going to travel and maybe live in Italy for a little while. Just being more involved, more and more involved with family, going to events, ball games, and things like that. Sorry that there we go. I forgot to set my phone on Do Not Disturb. So, is there anything else that you say is next for you?
No, I don't think so. I think Fred and I are toying with writing an article for Harvard Business Review, so that's drawing a little attention. The evidence, and the nice thing about having Fred and Rick Aberman from the University of Minnesota, the three of us started the company. The nice thing about having them was their penchant for research. And so all of our work is data-based. And so if anybody says to us at some time, well, what's the result if I take this program? And we can show it to them. And so, and the basis from that came from Fred and Rick, who said, look, optimal performance is always going to be elusive if people don't know how to manage stress. And so that simple sentence is what started this whole adventure. And it's not just for us. MYT is a lovely, nice, small company. There are bookshelves worth of stuff. If you never called MYT, there's so much research out there and so much good information, go find it and use it, because it's going to help.
I could, and I don't think there's a more important time in the history, at least of my 55 years on the planet, that I've seen and witnessed, where the importance of emotional competency is so prevalent. Right now, the vast majority of us need it individually, but also collectively. As a country and as a world, we need to have more emotional competency out there. And what I really like about it, Art, is the more emotional competency, emotional intelligence you place into your life and practice, and as it impacts you, it has such a ripple effect on all those people around you, all your loved ones, your associates, your coworkers, your peers, your clients. It just has such an amazing ripple effect around you.
Yeah, we like it when we get it.
Yeah,
how many times have we been someplace, and desperate to get something or solve something, and somebody says, "Oh, I can help you do that," and all of a sudden our suds level just drops. So we like it when we get it from others. We just need to work hard at being able to provide it for others.
I agree. Art, I want to share one last thing as we begin to wrap up with our journey today. I have a process that I created last year. Actually, one of my clients created the initial process, Scott out of Seattle, and kudos to him, shout out to him because I know he's listening, a process called 12 wins that he wanted to have for 2023. So I incorporated, what are my 12 wins that I want this year? Then I created a program around it, and then I started working with most of my clients on this. So the vast majority of my client base has their 12 wins, what they want. And so many of those people have things that they want to do that when I look back now, it's regarding emotional competency. It's regarding treating others a certain way. And one of mine I put on there was to practice 50 random acts of kindness this year. Just intentionally hold the door for somebody. Intentionally call somebody by their name when they're serving me at the retail store or checking out. Just, say hello to somebody. Walk up and talk to somebody who looks like they're lonely. And what I realized is it's so self-fulfilling that after 3 weeks, I think I have done 12 or 15, or the month of January, I had already done 12 or 15. So I put the goal to 150. And what I notice about it is when I do that, the people look at you real funny and say, well, thank you so much. Or then I walk away and I feel elevated as a human being. So it has a ripple effect, not just on other people, but also within your own heart. You walk away feeling so much better, which gives you more power, more energy, perhaps more emotional competency to do it even more the next day or the next moment you have an opportunity to do so. So I can't thank you and your team and Rick and Fred and Danielle Allen for what she's doing in the political world, for all the work you guys are doing, because this is not just life changing, it's world changing. And it really is. So everybody out there, please click on the links below and explore this. Explore MYT, explore Fred Luskin, explore Danielle Allen, and maybe explore Rick Aberman and his work. I know I've read a lot of his work over the past several years. So my final question, Art, as we wrap up here, is this. Simple. I call it the net question. It catches everything we miss. Is there any question that I did not ask that you wish I would have, or any final message you want to leave with myself and the Bamboo Pack audience?
I don't think so. I think I gave due acknowledgement to my wife. She's been the backbone, for me and for all these decades. So I think that's there. No, I think the only other comment I would have is that the act of kindness that you helped everybody with, it's a great sleeping pill, because at the end of the day, when you put your head on the pillow and you go back and your brain will do this. If you did 3 or 4 acts of kindness that day and you deliberately look at the face of the person that you're doing it with, they'll all come back to you. And what that does is it produces dopamine, which is a great sleeping aid. So you get satisfaction, like Brian said, right up front, of feeling good about doing something for another human being. But it's also a reserve sleeping pill in case you're going to have a little trouble going to sleep one night. Put them in your mind. You'll go to sleep quickly.
I love that. Acts of kindness is a great sleeping pill. I think I found the title for today's episode.
Okay. Okay.
Well, Art, my friend of many years and a person I've always looked up to and admired and respected, and you've always shown that same respect back to me. I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for being such an amazing guest and such a wise leader in this world that we have and in this field of emotional competency and leadership and kindness. Thank you so much for being such an amazing guest on the Bamboo Lab podcast.
It's my honor, my friend. My honor to be here for you.
Oh, I appreciate it. And do you have I know you're busy. Do you have a couple of minutes after we sign off?
Oh, sure.
Okay,
I'll
good.
be glad to wait.
Good. I will. Then I'll salute to the Bamboo Pack members out there. I want to thank each and every one of you for tuning in again this week. You've been amazing. You humble me. And honestly, I'm shocked at the amazing reception we've gotten from around the world and from letters that we've received. Please, if you like what we've heard, I know you did today, please smash that like button. Give us a rating, give us a review, subscribe to the Bamboo Lab podcast, and most importantly, please share this with 3 loved ones. Email it, text them, invite them to any platform that they have so they can listen to it. This is life and world-changing wisdom that we shared today, and that's all due to Art and his team and the people he surrounds himself with, and especially to the backbone of his life, his wife, Deborah. So everyone, excuse me, we'll talk again in a few days. In the meantime, please get out there and sculpt your life. Please get out there and strive to be your best, the best version of yourself. Please get out there and show love and respect to all others and yourself. And please, by all means, live intentionally. Until next time, please know that I appreciate each and every single one of you.